Hello, everyone. We're going to allow a few more folks to come in, but thank you so much for joining us for the screening of Meghan Moe Beitiks' Untitled Desert Refractions. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Welcome and thank you for joining us for Meghan Moe Beitiks' Untitled Desert Refractions. We will be waiting for more attendees to join us for the next several minutes. As you sit down and prepare for the event, we suggest you use headphones for maximum listening experience, but of course, they're not mandatory. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Again, we thank you all so much. We'll be beginning in a few minutes. We thank you for being here. Again, we ask that if you have headphones, that you grab them for maximum listening experience, but of course, they are not mandatory. Hello. Again, we thank you so much for being here for the first screening of our current artist in residence, Meghan Moe Beitiks' Untitled Desert Refractions. We're going to be waiting a couple more minutes for folks to arrive. And we ask that if you have headphones, that you use them for maximum listening experience, but of course, they're not mandatory. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. We thank you so very much for being here tonight. We will begin our program for tonight's screening of Meghan Moe Beitiks' work, Untitled Desert Refractions. We appreciate a full audience tonight in support of Moe and support of the Rogers Art Loft. The Rogers Art Loft is made possible by the Rogers Foundation, dedicated to transforming lives through art and education in Southern Nevada. To briefly introduce Moe, Meghan Moe Beitiks works with associations and disassociations of culture, nature, and structure. She analyzes perceptions of ecology through the lens of sight, history, emotion, and her own body in order to produce work that examines relationships with the non human. The work emerges as videos, performances, installations, writings, or photography, depending on what arises from a process of research and improvisation. Moe has received her BA in theater arts from the University of California, Santa Cruz, where she studied playwriting, acting, movement, and scenic design. She has an MFA in performance art from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, where she studied bioart, social practice, environmental chemistry, and performance methodologies. She has presented works in California, Chicago, Brooklyn, Wales, London, Latvia, Australia, and Russia. She's been a Fulbright Student Fellow in the Theater of Latvia, a MacDowell Colony Fellow, an Oxbow Leroy Neiman Fellow, a Bemis Artist in Residence, and the School of the Art Institute of Chicago's recipient of the AIDS Foundation Prize for Emerging Artists. We are so thankful to have had Moe in residence. We would also like to take note that Moe will be here answering questions following the screening, so stick around if you want to ask any questions. Now I'll give us a brief description of tonight's work. Untitled Desert Refractions. Moe writes, in response to the reflective glass surfaces of many Las Vegas resorts, the desert environment, the arc of the sun, and the poem Ozymandias, the work explores reflection, opulence, sunlight, legacy, and the impermanence of power. Devised with incredible performers Adriana Chavez, Karla Lagunas, and Amanda Guardado, this with sound structure by Stephen Germana and video by the talented Spencer Haley and Shahab Zargari. This piece will include both pre-recorded and live stream elements as the Las Vegas sunset in real time. And now, here's the premiere screening of Untitled Desert Refractions. Awesome. Thank you so much, Mo, for your work. Thank you so much for everyone that is here. Now, we will have our Q&A section of our talk. So, any one of our attendees that is here, if you have a question, please feel free to input that question in the Q&A box, and we will go about answering those questions.
Thanks so much for having me here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Yeah. Just as a note while we're waiting for kind of questions to come in to that side of me, is a live stream of the sculpture that's mentioned in the credits that is a collaboration between me and Lou Varela Rico. And it's got 3 panels of gold glass and etched with quotations from the poem. And I'm just gonna, while we're waiting for questions, bring up a few detail shots of that work so you can see a little bit more going on than the resolution of the live stream camera provides. But Lou spot welded the piece with some really glorious kind of gold tinted accents, and then I went through and did some pyrite and gold detailing around the edges. So all those little crumbly bits are chunks of pyrite. And some of these shots don't necessarily do justice to the really great angled work that Lou did in fitting all of these things together. Each of the panels, the whole sculpture faces due southwest, but each of the panels is angled slightly to direct towards one of the major resorts with that feature gold windows, in a point to their kind of obscenity and also their potential future obsolescence. So, and the 3 phrases that are etched onto the glass are the hand that mocked, the heart that fed, which is reversed on the other side of the glass away from the Rogers Art Loft viewer, and which yet survive, which is the lowest panel. So I just wanted to show a few of those details and give folks some greater perspective on like the different facets of the work. I also want to say thank you so much to all of the performers and camera folks that Lance mentioned before. So Karla, Amanda, Adriana, Spencer, and Shahab. It's really like a collaborative process. The performance itself especially is devised by the 3 performers with my kind of shaping and guidance. So it's a perpetual dialogue, and I feel really privileged to have worked with a really fantastic creative community while I've been here. So yeah, that's the thing. So if anyone has questions or comments, there's some really great positive feedback in some of the comments so far, so that's really nice to see.
So, I have a question for you. Just in regards to your time here at the Rogers Art Loft, we've just been so thankful to have you. What has it been like engaging with the community here in Las Vegas, and how was it, manifesting these ideas away from the space and then getting here? Like, what things changed, what things stayed true to your vision, what wonderful surprises did you find while you were in residence?
So I also wanted to mention that the sounds are based on a sound structure that is created by Stephen Germana, who is the only person of the crew who is not local, and like the the collaborative spirit is so generative that actually it's easy to lose track of that because he was working from Florida and sending me the updates to the Max patch. So so acknowledging that and really grateful for the amazing structure there. Yeah, so I guess I knew that I wanted to talk about impermanence and the kind of posturing of opulence that a lot of the major resorts do, and the ecological reality of the desert and the grand arc of the sun as a celestial body, and a lot of that pointed towards this poem Ozymandias, which is itself a kind of reflection on the impermanence of power. And uh, I think the sculpture, when I originally was thinking about it, was going to be a single pane of glass that proved not to be possible. We had to adjust for the samples that I had, and Luis came in, had some really great ideas for the metal structure, so we kind of adapted that together, and he did a really great job putting it together. For the performance, I mean, really, Adriana and Amanda and Karla and I just went over this one route in downtown Las Vegas over and over and over again. And every time they would discover new aspects of it or new nuances or new kind of things to point attention to, they would experiment with the mirrors in a new way and find different kind of moments. And so then we would kind of shape that over the course of the work. And then there's, things that they did where I was just like, that was not okay, but that was also part of the hope of the process coming forward, was just like, yeah, like I want to work with skilled performers locally um, and have their expertise influence the shape of the work, have their perspective influence the shape of the work. And they really did a fantastic job. They blitzed out all of their own costumes with the disco bits, with the golden bits, and they really utilized that as like extensions of their own mirrors and reflective surfaces in the performance. And so there were a lot of moments there are discoveries not only of like the sun and the site, but also like the sun and their movements in their bodies in the site, which are all really lovely. Thinking about the inarguable and relentless power of the sun and engaging and negotiating with that on many levels. So
Wonderful. Thank you. We have one question from an anonymous attendee that asks, what surprised you the most about Las Vegas?
What surprised me the most? I guess like part of me came to this thinking that I was going to be grumpy and ironic the whole time, basically. It was just like, rah, it's Las Vegas. Rah, it's these giant buildings, rah, 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 like ecological, rah, 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 and the reality of the community here is such that it's like I can't afford to be grumpy anymore because there's just like such generosity and kindness and skill and consideration and like nuanced intellectual consideration and all of that, and also staying present with that reality. Like everyone I've talked to is like, part of me, yeah, water is like a perpetual issue. Like, yeah, we're in the desert. Yeah, these like huge buildings are not necessarily sustainable. Yeah, they get torn down and rebuilt as soon as capital dictates that they're not profitable. And so there's like, I guess I've experienced a real like sense of a community that is both generous and skilled and also knows the structural, capitalistic, and ecological threats to its reality and is not afraid to voice them, which I think is actually super valuable. I've been in a number of different communities where the impetus is to never acknowledge growing edges, dangers, like faults. And I feel like that's actually a greater poison to a working community than it is to be able to speak the painful truths out loud. So yeah, so I've been really grateful for that, and like wanting to like come back and explore more aspects of this area and see what else there is to discover while staying present with all of that, all of those difficulties.
Thank you, Mo, for that answer to that great question. We have another question from an anonymous attendee that asks, I saw the performers had headphones. Were they listening to audioscape when they were creating, or did you adjust the audioscape after the movements were recorded? AKA, did the movements inspire the audio, or did the audio inspire the movement?
What's funny is those aren't actually headphones. Those are actually personal wind fans. And so that I think there's enough fragmentation in the footage and like, resolution and transmission that maybe doesn't translate. But they're actually, because we were going to be working in the sun, I wanted to give them a prop that would help keep them cool, but then also fit into the general kind of visual space they were occupying. So those are actually like tiny fans that they could turn on and direct to their face. And they're such seasoned locals that for the most part they didn't necessarily need them. I provided like 20 times more water than was absolutely necessary. I was like, Lance, we need more water. We're always going to need water. And they would go 45 minutes and then like have some water out of their water bottle when they were done and be like, cool, what's next? Like they were fine. Um, but they did have, I don't know if you noticed, those red cylinders kind of hanging off of carabiners off of their shorts. And what those were Bluetooth speakers. So they had Bluetooth speakers, not headphones, that were hanging off of them. And that was where the music would play as a source for them to respond to, but also for any passersby or live kind of witnesses that we had. And the way that the audio kind of evolved was that I had an initial kind of conversation with Stephen about like the general themes that I was thinking about. He created this max patch structure that had these major tones in it. So there was wind, there were some mid-range drones, there was some fuzz, there was some violin plucking. That he's also like a classically trained musician, so he was just like, I'm gonna like rapidly pluck some violins for you. And a couple of other really lovely blinky beeps and whatnot in there. And so what I would do is I would watch the rehearsals, and then in the initial rehearsals, I had the Max Patch live on my laptop, and I would go on this cart with an umbrella and like mix live while they were playing, and then I would go home and formalize those into tracks, and then we would later load those tracks onto an iPad on its own cooling pad and ran the show from that. So there was an iPad sending individual tracks that were recorded from the Max Patch to their Bluetooth speakers. And I think it was kind of a back and forth dialogue. So I would try out different tracks, and based on what they were doing, I would keep it or change it. I would incorporate new tracks based on what I perceived as shifts in mood or pace or location. And there were moments when they, as performers, made decisions to either like go with the flow of the music or to kind of, Adriana had a really great phrase of like staying above the music, like choosing to acknowledge its presence, but kind of operate on a different wavelength. So, so there's this kind of moment of back and forth attunement here. So I also want to note that there's a delay to the live stream for the sculpture, and right now there's a lovely little glow up of sun rays that are happening, which means that you'll get it in about 5 minutes time wise. So keep watching that sculpture space. The gold reflective glass, you can see a little bit of in the lower panel. But yeah, thanks, Shahab. I appreciate that you love the Luxor light inclusion. One of the things that I think is especially potent about the Luxor in relationship to the poem is that the poem was originally written in response to a very colonialist discovery of an Egyptian tomb. And so this is white Percy Shelley contemplating the impermanence of power based on an Egyptian ruin. And here we are in Las Vegas, where we have this Western culture essentially rebuilding the pyramids to state their own power, and that light at the top of the Luxor is like very much part of that. And so, wanting the performers to reflect on that space, and they really did it beautifully and meaningfully, I think. So.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that question. We have another question from Duff Norris. Is the live camera element a permanent aspect? If so, what interests you about that? Live camera on the sculpture, that is, Duff. Want to clear that up. But the question again, is the live camera element a permanent aspect? If so, what interests you about that?
That's not something that we've discussed with the Rogers Art Loft, although I'm definitely open to it if you guys want to do that. But there's already aspects of this work that I made a very comprehensive proposal of what the work would be, and almost as soon as we got here, like new elements started emerging. And so for me, the live stream of the light on the sculpture is important because of the um, the reality of devising work in real time in concert with the sun. So the original performance work, all of the original performance route was devised to happen at around 11 o'clock in the morning. It's just in terms of the angle where the sun was coming and the route of the performance and what was possible along the route in terms of reflective surfaces. So we would meet at 10 a.m. and we would warm up and they would change and I would set music and then we would go along the route for about 45 minutes or so. And so for this culminating event, it was important to me to include some aspect of a live experience of sunlight um, to, so for you to experience that aspect of the work in real time because all of the footage of the performance is recorded. So I'm hoping that this kind of points to that on some level, even though it's very slight and subtle at this point. Um, and you can watch the light change kind of very gently over the course of the 40 minutes or so.
Awesome. Thank you, Mo, for that answer to that question. We want to let you all know if you have any more questions, go ahead and add them to the Q&A. Yeah, so we'll just be here. But yeah, just anything else that you would like to ideate about, Mo, in regards to?
Um, I can show the photos of the sculpture close-ups again. I just want to nerd out again about Luis is really great at working with. There's a sign that he made for the Rogers Studio Gallery that is this lovely kind of textured rusted surface of a steel sign. And so we talked a lot about this idea of uh, creating a ruin to a certain extent, and for me wanting to um, really like juxtapose what's going to be rust on the surface of the steel. Like the rust that's there will continue to grow over the course of the life of the sculpture, and it's also mostly recycled scraps from Lewis's wood shop, not wood shop, but shop that it was used to create the work. And so yeah, wanting to make something that speaks both to opulence and decay, but also fragility and the creative process, I guess. So that's what that is, and that's me going over the surface of the sculpture with epoxy and ground pyrite and just being like, so, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for those close-ups, Mo. Again, if there's any other questions, please be sure to add them into the chat. Gonna give ourselves a few more minutes.
Do you have any questions, Lance?
Well, yes. In regards to your time in residence, like what are some of the new modalities of creating that you'll take with you? Like what are some of the things that you'll take with you in regards to your time spent going into other residency spaces, other creative endeavors? What things did you conquer and learn while you were here?
Well, I thought I really adored the creation of the performance process. It was just like this perpetual conversation. It was really lovely to just hold space in. I actually really loved working with all of the collaborators. I feel like working with Louise has helped me get over the hump of like making sculpture. Like I've never, even though I've dropped like 3 beads in my life. That was my joke when I arrived. I was like, Luis, I'm not welding this thing. I've dropped 3 beads in my life. Like I can't, I'm not starting now for this piece. And he ended up bringing this real deep material knowledge about how the metal was going to behave and how it needed to be structured to hold the glass. That made a better thing that I could have done on my own, like, learning it specifically for this project. So that was a real joy. I just delight with the max patch every time I get to play with it. So like I've been constantly sending Steven texts like, listen to this, look what we made. Rah! I think even more aggressively embracing how collaborative my process is one thing. Planning for a studio assistant is another thing. Spent a lot of time making hardware store runs. And I was like, I was trying to, I don't know, save budget or time, or be like, I can do it. I'm not that fancy. But it's like, it's not about fancy. It's just about time. It was really lovely to sandblast. Like I did learn how to sandblast the glass and etch the glass for this project, and I was really excited to learn that I could do it with the industrial garnet and with sand that I had collected on a trip to Red Rock with Duff. So thanks for going out to Red Rock with me, Duff. And that was just a really satisfying process. And if you ever do come see the work in person at Rogers Studio Gallery, you'll see that the etching is fairly comparatively deep. It's not just like a surface scratch, and there's little flecks that give it a kind of a sandstormy slate quality, which is definitely what I was hoping for. So it's given me the confidence to take on more new processes and new collaborations in my future work, I guess are the biggest takeaways. And I think those are very healthy takeaways.
Yeah, I think so too. Thank you for that wonderful answer. We have another question from Ray. They ask, what is unique about pyrite that informed your choice?
Well, that's a good question. I wanted to incorporate it because it's fool's gold, because it is a thing that looks like gold that isn't gold. It is a thing that suggests a kind of richness or discovery, and just isn't that. And to me, that's what the gold glass is. It's a kind of fool's gold. And the thing that I love, and the thing is, working with pyrite, like, it's actually gorgeous. Like, I was throwing it, and it's this beautiful mica-like glittery kind of substance, and it's like, fool's gold doesn't need to apologize for not being gold, but it is ridiculous for there to be so much effort and energy spent towards gold-like appearances for the sake of signaling opulence. And that's that idea that this is a mineral that signifies opulence without necessarily having value is one that I wanted to bring into the work. In part as a question to that too. Like, why would we value something like gold more so than the quality of the sand at Red Rock, or the water that's coming out of Lake Mead? So Shaheen writes something in the chat. This may be very far from your thoughts, but I felt something like this while watching the video. The activation of spaces around the city by local artist performers, with their movements and their projecting light onto spaces, made me think of how local communities claim and reclaim their relationship to spaces and to one another in ways that exist beyond and in the face of capitalist exploitation and intrusion into communities and cities via the resorts you are critiquing. Like an insistence of resilience and vitality and a long history of communities in the face of these powers. I hope this makes sense. Hard to word in a chat. Shaheen, that's gorgeous. I mean, I will say that while I didn't initially envision that as part of the concept for the work, that was so much part of the process. Like, every time we walked through that neighborhood, I got new wisdom about the area from the performers. Like, when we were driving around doing location shots, I was joking that Karla was my personal tour guide, because she was constantly spouting facts that, some of which were like quote unquote public knowledge, but some of which were a deeper knowledge that came from coming from a family of contractors and growing up in Las Vegas. Um, and I was hoping as much as possible for that to inform the work and kind of shape the work, like wanting to honor that as much as possible in the process. And so it makes me really happy that you say that, actually. I joked a lot in the beginning that I was a bit intimidated coming into this, where I'm arriving and I had three very powerful local performers as part of the cast. And so I'm coming in basically as the outsider and being like, and now we're going to devise a work together. And so it was kind of a constant negotiation with us in terms of their perspective on how the work was unfolding in space, and my original concepts for it. And so yeah, this idea of them as performers claiming and reclaiming the space was very much my experience of the process. So that makes me really happy that that's what you experienced in the work.
Wonderful. Okay, so if we don't have any more questions from or comments from our audience, we will go ahead and wrap things up. Mo, I just want to thank you so much for your tenacity, your vision. It's been a true joy to have you with us here in Las Vegas, and I'm sad that you'll be leaving us soon. But I'm so grateful that you brought things like your sculpture and the movement, like you've shown everyone that's seen your work, anyone that's experienced the things you've created, how to look at our spaces differently. And I thank you for that. And yeah, I'm just so thankful. And also, we at the Rogers Art Loft would like to thank every attendee that's here via YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, wherever you are in the world, in physical body and spirit. We thank you so much for sharing your time with us. And again, Mo, we thank you so much for your brilliance. We are humbled and honored to know you. And I'm just so looking forward to the fantastic things that this life will provide for you with all your talents. So thank you.
Lance, I so appreciate you and Spencer and everyone from Rogers Art Loft and all of the collaborators we mentioned. It's been a real growth experience for me, and it's uh, just a real, like, a level of generosity that becomes emotional in having to work to accept it, right? That's also part of who you are as a person, but like, there's points at which it becomes difficult of just like, wait, yes, ah, thank you, so much good stuff. I don't know if I can handle it. But yes, thank you so much, and super grateful to have been here and to work with all these lovely people, and you especially. So thanks, everyone.
Of course. And again, thank you, Mo. And thank you to our attendees. You can find us on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram. And if you have any more information that you want to know, you can find them there at our website as well, rogersartloft.com. And again, we thank you so much for being here. And we hope that you all are safe and sound. And we hope you have a wonderful evening. And we thank you again, Mo. And we thank you again to our attendees.
And thanks to Spencer, who's running the thing from the background for all of the live stream assistance. So thank you, Spencer.
Yes, Krista, thank you so much for your wizardry. We're thankful. And you'll have a wonderful evening, okay? Thank you so much. Bye-bye.